Anita here and welcome to another video. This week we are going to be doing another one of those little experiments, I suppose, tests, experiments that I've been doing recently. Like I've done 2 videos ago with the watercolor wood. I just felt like doodling, I suppose. I just felt like getting something out of my head. So this time I am painting something inspired by bioluminescent algae. Do you know those pictures you sometimes see of a beach covered in sparkles that look almost like stars? That's the kind of that's the type of a algae plankton or whatever that actually emits light when unfortunately when stressed. But it just looks beautiful. My interest in it is actually was piqued by a manga that I've read in the past, Children of the Sea, in which there is a little chapter when it's just explained what it is and kind of put into the story. So I actually looked it up from there, and I was mesmerized by how much it really looked like a sky. Now, the idea in this manga is that a lot of things that happen in the sea can look like the universe and can look like parts of human body, for example, as in the sea is something more than just water. And in this case, I really love the idea that the plankton was really looking like the stars, like the galaxies just swirling. It was just it's a really cool idea. I loved it. And so I just wanted to try drawing it just once. Now you have to remember that I don't draw anything realistic. So what I really wanted to do, or rather how I attempt painting something like this, is that I look at the pictures and try to pinpoint what is it that I like about that picture. And so I really liked the kind of layers that the sea creates when the waves just keep coming in, and every wave brings a little bit more of that plankton, which creates a little bit of like a shiny line. And so you can really see where the wave ends by that shiny line. And this is something I really wanted to just have fun with with that little thing. And so I have 3 colors prepared here. I've laid down a little bit of a background because I still wanted it to be kind of like a beach, just maybe seem like a beach a little bit. Now this picture should be viewed actually upside down from here, so the beach is at the bottom. But it was easier for me to paint these layers from the top, of course, down. And so I've just flipped the canvas upside down. But to be fair, actually, it doesn't matter in this case from what point you're viewing it, because yeah, it makes sense both ways. So yeah, I'm really just trying to have a background here for the little sparklies that will come later. And so I've put down that layer of the sand, let's call it like that. So there is a layer of a little bit of a yellow and brown, very earthy tones, not too bright. I didn't want this picture to be bright. I wanted it to seem, of course, as if it was the night, but still not dark enough so that you could see all the different layers of the water that I'm putting in. As you can see here, I'm just using a very white brush and trying to make those layers very, very flat. Now this is kind of a throwback to OG Anita from like 2 years back, when I really wanted all my layers to be super flat. Nowadays I feel like I've went back for it. I'm not so stressed about my layers not being completely perfect, especially with the last painting for the collective that came. I just slapped that paint around. And I saw that you guys liked it, so I'm glad, because I will be trying to do that more often. But in this case, I really wanted to have a flat background because there will be a lot of detail coming on top, and I want it to be nicely visible. And here you could see me actually darkening that, muting it down a little bit, because I felt that the background, that the yellow was still a little bit too bright. And so I've covered the whole canvas, the whole piece of paper, with just a thin layer of the same blue I'm using. And I'm using a few different blues in this. This is a mix. I just mixed the blues. And as I keep going down towards the bottom, I'm trying to make those layers a little bit darker. And so I think I've started primarily with phthalo blue, but I keep adding different darker blues that I have, making the color more concentrated. And at the very end, a few last layers, I'm actually putting in just pure black. I don't remember which black I have, but it's this granulating black from Daniel Smith. And so I've just added that just to make it really, really, really dark. Yeah. And I have to say, this was really a hard piece to record, because the recording and pictures, they don't seem to really give the amount of details in the layer. The layers stand out much more like off camera and to the real eye. I mean, it's a common problem when you're doing traditional art, just digitizing your own work. But in this case, I've had a lot of trouble, really a lot of trouble to digitize this watercolor. So here I'm going to the colored pencils. And as I've mentioned, this is an experiment, so I wasn't exactly sure how I wanted to achieve what I wanted to see. As I've mentioned before, the one thing that really made me love the bioluminescent plankton, or algae plankton. Yeah, I'm all about the views, not so much about the theory behind it. Yeah, sorry for that. So one thing that really made me think about it and made me love it was that every single layer of water, every single new wave was bringing in a little bit more of that plankton, and it really kind of pushed it towards the edge of the wave. And so it really kind of like, you could see a real thick line of white, of just shine at the edge of the wave. And I wanted to kind of replicate that somehow. And as I've said, because I'm not realistic, I don't paint realistically, I tried to figure out how I would do it, like for myself. And I figured that the best way would be to just come in with colored pencils. I was entertaining the idea of gouache, but it seemed to me like the colored pencils were a little bit easier to handle, and they also had a little bit more texture. I'm really trying to embrace that texture lately, and because this whole painting was so flat, now towards the bottom, as I mentioned, I've added black into the blue, and that black is granulating, so that kind of broke the flatness, but I still felt like, you know, I really wanted to have a little bit more of that texture. And so that white pencil on top of the dark watercolor, it really creates, because it's not smooth, the white pencil is not completely smooth like paint would be. So it creates a lot of really neat texture that, of course, ties everything together. And so, I mean, all the waves together. And so I'm just coming in here, and I'm not really rushing with this painting because, as I said, I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing. This is all an experiment. It's just something for fun. So I'm trying to kind of solve a problem, I suppose, how to get the effect I want. And so at first I put in just a simple line to see how I liked that. And then one thing I also liked is that when the water goes away, of course, it brings all the plankton in, and then it moves back, of course, like a wave, right? And so there are these very, very distinctive lines created by the plankton that's being pulled back into the ocean. And I wanted to create that, so I've decided to come in with the colored pencil and just doodle. Just kind of try to maybe not really fade in, but create a little bit more definition in around that line. So yeah, I'm kind of fading it into, but not exactly completely. You know what I mean? It's just I'm trying to create. I'm trying to fade in fade the plankton that's not even on the paper yet. I'm trying to fade in that into that blue. And that took a really long time because it's a very repetitive task. You really just, you know, you have to keep doing it until on every single layer. And as you can see, I have tons of those layers of the sea. At some point, of the waves. At some point, I was even thinking that perhaps it would have been easier and better to make less of those layers. But then again, I really, really wanted to play with the transparency, with the layers. I especially love how they layer on top of the beach, of the sand. That's probably my favorite bit. And also, while I was painting this, I was actually remembering the story in the manga, and I was amazed how many things, of course, let's remember, I am not a realistic painter, so for me it's, you know, it's not really saying much. But in my way of painting, this here could be also the sky. It kind of made me think of Northern Lights a little bit, of how it got that lacy effect. Especially when you think about it, that the top is the sky. It's you know, you're looking at it this way, and all of a sudden you have just Northern Lights. And it made me kind of feel like I was going in the right direction, because that's what I wanted to achieve. Kind of the feeling that the sea was not only the sea, that it could be also something else. You really have to read the manga if you want to know what I'm talking about, because that story is way too complex. If you're interested, if you're reading mangas and you would like to read that one, I'm gonna leave the author, because I never remember the author. I'm gonna leave the author and of course the title, Children of the Sea, in the description, so you can look into that. This is probably one of my favorite mangas ever, and it's complete. It's only 5 volumes, so that's the perfect amount. So as you can see here, it's just a very repetitive work. I had a show running in the background, just trying to pass the time, because that's probably one of my least favorite parts of painting, that repetitiveness that you have to sometimes do, because, you know, the one thing that keeps me going is that I know it's gonna look awesome at the end once I have everything. But, you know, to get there, you have to go through that repetitive bit. So, yeah, it was really tiring, but eventually I got through it. And definitely this piece took much longer to complete than the wooden pattern, which is, for me, it's the same kind of painting, just a little bit of an experiment and test. But it had a lot more repetitive bits and a lot less freedom, I suppose, because with wood, it's very organic and very natural, and you kind of just swirl the pencil around. Here, I was actually trying to keep all the lines, the white lines, vertical, so that they're all straight. I felt that it was really helping the composition, helping the idea. If they were all straight, if they were just wiggly a little bit, then it wouldn't look like, you know, like something like gravity was pulling it back. You know what I mean? It's just something that I needed to do. But eventually I got through that, and then came the other repetitive part, and this was even more repetitive than the colored pencil. Here I was putting in the shiny bits, the plankton. Now, you might be wondering, why didn't you do it with a splatter? And I couldn't, because I don't know about you, but when I look at the pictures of the bioluminescent plankton on the beach, it doesn't look like something, you know, splattered or random. It actually looks very precise to me. It looks like a precise view. I don't know how to explain this, but the splatter wouldn't do it. It had to be put by hand, every single little dot by hand. And I also wanted to, they are not all of them, all of them are not, each of them is different, like this, Each of them is different. Some of them I wanted them to be slightly bigger. And once again, to get the idea that this might be indeed a galaxy or a starry sky. because of course not all stars are the same size, and they kind of gather in those little galaxy, you know, rounder circles, and they just, I really wanted to pull that into this picture. And I keep saying, of course, that it's repetitive, but all in all, it was a very satisfying picture. I have, it was tiring because, of course, I'm standing there just putting in dots. So your mind is going to, at some point, just turn off. And that's bad because, of course, I keep constantly trying to think about the good placement for the stars. At some point, as I'm doing here, I started doing the bigger bits, the bigger stars, the bigger plankton first, and then I just filled it in with just tiny little dots. And I was trying to concentrate them more towards the, I suppose you could call it a map that I've done before with the white pencil. Like I've said before, I was trying to blend in the plankton before the plankton was even there. So I'm basically putting in the plankton mostly concentrated in the whiter parts, in the parts I've put in with the colored pencil, and that makes the easiest glow effect I could think of. Because initially, especially when you see, I don't know if there, I have never seen the bioluminescent plankton with my own eyes. So I'm only basing it on pictures. And of course, pictures can be altered with Photoshop, colored, the vibrancy can be up. So I've never seen it. So I can't really tell if, how it really looks like. Some pictures made me think that there was a little bit of this bluish hue, and of course in the water it makes sense. However, I didn't want to really get into that because I feel that these little paintings are supposed to be kind of like sketches. They're just little practices, they're little tests, you know, that I have in my head I would like to try, so I'm letting myself try it. But I felt that if I wanted to put another color around the edges of the plankton, or I wanted to blend it into, you know, a little bit more of a, let's say, teal color, just get it a little bit more magical looking, and I think that would just have taken too much time, and that's something that you would put in a painting and not just a sketch. Because this for me is a sketch. This is just me practicing. This is a little practice piece. It took me about an hour and a half to finish this from start to finish. And I am not gonna lie, I am tempted to do it again, just try to fit some of this bioluminescence somewhere. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it or not, but there might be a chance with the collective next month. So I am going to see if that's going to be possible. But for now, this one is finished. As you can see, it's just a simple composition. Actually, it took much longer to make it than it might seem. And I wasn't able to capture the darkness of the top layers, and it just, you have to see it with your eye. However, I'm pretty happy with how I've scanned it, and I was able to adjust it in Photoshop, so at least that. So if you would like to see the full version of this, how I see it, I suppose you can go to my Facebook page. And there's of course a link to my Redbubble if you would like some merch with this painting. And yeah, and here I've kind of started enjoying, you know, adding a little bit of that peel porn. Please do not demonetize me. Jesus, I can't speak. Yeah, every single video I put up lately gets demonetized. Just for a few hours, but it gets demonetized. So yeah, please do not demonetize me. But yeah, I really enjoy, because these are full paintings, I enjoy seeing how the edge gets revealed. It's so satisfying. Even though the painting is actually A4, so I'm cutting away that edge in the end, but you know, for my own pleasure and for your viewing pleasure, I decided to just keep it in the video at least. So yeah, thank you so very much for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this little video. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Bye!